Have you ever been betrayed by the one person you swore you would always protect? The one person you loved more than yourself? For Leo, that person was his younger sister, Sarah. He lay in a sterile hospital bed, the antiseptic smell a sharp contrast to the coppery tang of blood still faint in his memory. Every muscle ached, a deep, throbbing protest against the brutal lesson it had just learned. A constellation of purple and black bruises painted a story of violence across his face and ribs. But none of that pain, not the cracked rib or the split lip, could compare to the icy shard twisting in his heart. It had been delivered not by a fist, but by the cold, blue light of his phone screen. He stared at the message from Sarah, the words burned into his vision, "You're dead to me now," just 5 words to sever a lifetime of brotherhood. He had been her rock, her champion, her fierce protector since their parents passed away a decade ago. He'd worked 2 jobs to make sure she could finish college, his hands calloused and rough so hers could remain soft and turn the pages of textbooks. He'd been the monster that chased away her nightmares, the shield against the world's harsh edges. Now, in her eyes, he was the monster. And the man who had put him in this bed, the man with the charming smile and the heart of a serpent, was her hero. That man was Marcus, her fiancé. Leo closed his eyes, the sterile white of the room dissolving into a memory of Sarah's laughing face, so full of light, and a terrible, cold dread washed over him. He hadn't just lost a fight. He was losing her. And he didn't know if he was strong enough to win her back from the darkness that now held her. It had started subtly, a shadow at the edge of a sunlit photograph. Marcus was perfect, almost too perfect. He was a successful financial advisor, exuding a confidence that bordered on arrogance, but he coated it in a thick layer of charm that had everyone, especially Sarah, completely captivated. Leo, however, saw something else. He saw the flicker of irritation in Marcus's eyes when a waiter was too slow, the condescending tone he used with service workers, the way his smile never quite reached his eyes. Leo worked as a carpenter, a creator, a man who understood foundations. And the foundation of Marcus's character felt dangerously unstable. The real alarm bell rang when Leo, doing a small side job repairing a cabinet at Marcus's firm, overheard a hushed, panicked conversation. Names were mentioned, clients, elderly people, nest eggs, followed by the words "move the funds," offshore, and untraceables. The voice belonged to Marcus. It was cold, clinical, and utterly devoid of the warmth he showed Sarah. Leo's blood ran cold. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that Marcus was a thief, preying on the vulnerable. Protecting Sarah was an instinct, a reflex as natural as breathing. He couldn't go to the police without concrete proof, it was just a snippet of a conversation. He had to go to Marcus directly. He had to give him a chance to walk away from his sister, to leave her out of the impending implosion of his carefully constructed world. He arranged to meet him at the new house they were renovating, a place of future hopes that Leo now saw as a future crime scene. The air in the half-finished living room was thick with the smell of sawdust and fresh paint. Marcus stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, a portrait of impatient condescension. "Leo! Make it quick! I have dinner reservations with your sister." Leo didn't waste time. "I heard you at your office, Marcus. I heard what you're doing to your clients. You're stealing from them." He watched for a reaction, a flash of fear, of guilt. He saw nothing but amusement. A slow, predatory smile spread across Marcus's face. "You've got a big imagination, carpenter," Marcus sneered, taking a deliberate step forward. "You should stick to swinging a hammer. You're out of your depth. Leave Sarah out of this." Leo's voice was low, a warning rumble. "Walk away from her. Don't drag her down with you." Marcus laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that echoed in the empty house. "You think you can tell me what to do? You think she would ever choose you over me? You're a relic, Leo. A dusty memory of her past. I am her future." The confrontation escalated with terrifying speed. The charm vanished, peeled away to reveal something rotten and violent underneath. Marcus was bigger than Leo, not with a laborious strength, but with a coiled, athletic power. When Leo refused to back down, reiterating his demand that Marcus leave Sarah, Marcus's face contorted with rage. She is mine, he spat, and then the first punch landed, a blinding explosion of pain against Leo's jaw. Leo stumbled back, his mind reeling. This wasn't a fight, it was an assault. Marcus was relentless, his fists moving with a brutal efficiency. He drove Leo into a wall, the drywall cracking under the impact. He kicked Leo's ribs when he was down, his polished leather shoes leaving streaks of dust on Leo's work shirt. With every blow, he spat venomous words. This is for interfering. This is for thinking you matter. She will believe every word I say. Leo's last conscious thought before the world went dark was of Sarah's face, and the desperate, futile hope that she would see the truth. When he woke, the world was a blurry mess of flashing lights and concerned faces. Paramedics. Police. He was loaded onto a gurney, the rough straps digging into his bruised skin. At the hospital, after being poked, prodded, and stitched, he finally saw her. Sarah rushed into the emergency room, her face a mask of worry. But Marcus was right behind her, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, a small, artfully placed scratch on his cheek. Before Leo could even form a sentence, Marcus began to speak, his voice laced with practiced sorrow. I'm so sorry, Sarah. He was drunk. He came to the house, making these wild accusations. He said I wasn't good enough for you. He came at me. I just defended myself. Leo watched in horror as the narrative was stolen from him, twisted into an unrecognizable shape. He tried to speak, his voice a hoarse croak. No. Sarah, his lying, but his words were slurred, his appearance monstrous. He looked like the aggressor. Sarah looked from her battered, seemingly drunk brother to her handsome, composed fiancé. She saw what Marcus had programmed her to see. Her eyes, once full of love for Leo, hardened with disappointment and anger. She didn't say a word. She just turned and walked out, leaving Leo in the echoing silence of the hospital room. An hour later, his phone vibrated on the bedside table. He picked it up with a trembling hand. It was the message. The 5 words that broke him more than any punch. You're dead to me now. He was alone. Utterly and completely alone. The case was assigned to Detective Miller, a man in his late 50s with tired eyes that had seen every shade of human depravity. The report on his desk was simple: an aggravated assault, likely fueled by alcohol and a family dispute. A low-priority, open and shut case. But as Miller sat across from Leo in the quiet hospital room, something felt off. Leo wasn't belligerent or defensive, as aggressors often were. He was quiet, his pain seeming to radiate from a place deeper than his physical injuries. He answered Miller's questions with a quiet, devastating honesty, never raising his voice, never embellishing. He simply stated that Marcus had attacked him after he'd been confronted about his business dealings. When Miller asked why he didn't fight back more effectively, Leo's answer stuck with him. He's my sister's fiancé. I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to stop. Miller, the perceptive authority figure, saw not a culprit, but a victim. A man who had absorbed a brutal beating, holding onto a sliver of principle. He looked at the forensic report again. Leo's injuries were severe, defensive wounds absent. Marcus's only injury was a minor scratch, inconsistent with a desperate fight for self-defense. It looked more like a mauling than a brawl. The captain told him to close it, to file it as unverifiable. He said she said. But Detective Miller couldn't shake the image of Leo's haunted eyes. This wasn't just about a fight. It was about a predator hiding in plain sight. He made a decision. He wasn't closing this case. He was going to find the truth, even if he had to tear down a perfectly constructed facade to do it. His investigation began quietly. Miller was a patient man, a builder of cases, laying one small, solid brick of evidence at a time. He started with Marcus Thorne's financials. On the surface, they were impeccable. But Miller had a friend at the Financial Crimes Unit, someone who owed him a favor. He asked him to do a deep, off-the-books dive. While he waited, he looked into Marcus's past. He found a previous relationship that had ended abruptly, followed by a restraining order filed by the woman's protective father, an order that was later dropped. Interesting. He found a pattern of expensive purchases, luxury cars, and watches, that seemed to slightly outpace even his considerable income. He pulled traffic camera footage from the night of the assault. It showed Marcus's car driving away from the house, not towards a dinner reservation, but in the opposite direction, towards an industrial area. Another small crack. Leo, meanwhile, had been discharged from the hospital. He was staying in a cheap motel, his body healing far faster than his spirit. He refused to contact Sarah again. The ball was in her court. He had told his truth, he could do no more. He spent his days taking long, painful walks, his mind replaying every happy memory with his sister, trying to pinpoint the exact moment he had started to lose her. He was the overlooked virtuoso of loyalty, a man whose quiet integrity was his greatest, and now most painful, asset. Detective Miller wasn't just a cop, he was a student of human nature. He believed the truth often revealed itself in the small moments, the unguarded reactions. He decided it was time to put some pressure on the system. He paid a visit to Sarah. He didn't come with accusations, but with questions. He found her at the coffee shop she frequented, Marcus noticeably absent. He introduced himself calmly, his demeanor professional and non-threatening. He asked her to walk him through the night of the incident again. As she recounted Marcus's version of the story, her voice was confident, practiced. But Miller noticed the slight tremble in her hand as she lifted her coffee cup, the way she refused to make eye contact. "Your brother," Miller said softly, "he has no history of violence. Not even a speeding ticket. He worked 2 jobs to put you through school. Does that sound like a man who would throw it all away in a drunken rage?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "People change," she said, the words sounding hollow even to her own ears. Miller nodded slowly. "They do. They certainly do." He left her with that thought, a seed of doubt planted in the fertile ground of her lifelong love for her brother. Over the next week, Sarah began to see the cracks Leo had warned her about. She noticed Marcus's phone was always angled away from her. Once, she heard him on the phone, his voice dripping with the same cold fury she'd heard him use to describe Leo's attack. He was talking to a colleague, berating him over a misplaced file. When he hung up and saw her, his face instantly softened into the familiar, loving smile, but for a split second, she had seen the other man, the one from the empty house. The monster from Leo's story. The final piece of the puzzle arrived in a plain manila envelope on Detective Miller's desk. The deep dive into Marcus's finances had hit gold. It was a complex web of shell corporations and offshore accounts, but the conclusion was simple and damning. Marcus Thorne was running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme, siphoning millions from his clients, many of them retirees who had trusted him with their life savings. He had been planning an exit strategy, a new life with Sarah and their money, leaving a trail of financial ruin behind him. Miller now had the smoking gun. He didn't call Marcus's lawyers. He didn't issue a warrant. He drove directly to Sarah's apartment, the file in his hand. He found her alone, staring out the window, a pensive look on her face. "Sarah," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I think you need to see this. I think you need to see who your brother was trying to protect you from." He opened the file on her coffee table. Page after page detailed the cold, calculated theft. Bank statements, wire transfers, names of victims, families she knew, friends of her parents. It was undeniable. It was monstrous. The man she loved was a fiction. The brother she had cast out was her only true protector. The truth hit Sarah with the force of a physical blow. She stared at the documents, at the cold, hard numbers that represented shattered lives and stolen futures. Every lie Marcus had ever told her replayed in her mind, now cast in a sickening new light. His charm was a tool. His affection was a performance. Her love had been a shield for his crimes. The image of her brother, battered and broken in that hospital bed, flashed in her mind, and for the first time, she saw his injuries not as the result of a drunken brawl, but as the price he paid for trying to save her. Tears streamed down her face, tears of grief, of guilt, of white-hot fury. When Marcus came home that evening, whistling, carrying a bouquet of her favorite lilies, he found her sitting in the dark, the file open on the table. The charming smile faltered on his lips. "Sarah, honey, what's this?" he asked, his voice attempting a lightness it couldn't achieve. She looked up, her eyes blazing with a fire he had never seen before. "It's over, Marcus," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I know everything." The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. His face twisted into a snarl of pure rage. "That pathetic brother of yours? He couldn't just leave it alone." In that moment, she saw him. She saw the monster. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Detective Miller and 2 uniformed officers were waiting outside. The reckoning had come. Later that night, Sarah drove to the cheap motel on the edge of town. She found Leo's room and knocked softly. He opened the door, his face cautious, the bruises faded but the hurt still evident in his eyes. She didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry" felt like a pebble thrown into a canyon. So she just wept, deep, ragged sobs of a broken heart and a guilty soul. Leo didn't speak. He just stepped aside, let her in, and then did what he had always done. He pulled his little sister into his arms and held her while she fell apart. Months bled into a year. The seasons changed, washing the city with rain and then with sun. Marcus was convicted, his name now a headline associated with fraud and disgrace, his future confined to a small cell. The house he was renovating with Sarah was sold, its half-finished rooms a monument to a future that was thankfully never built. Leo and Sarah began the slow, arduous process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Trust, once shattered, is a mosaic pieced together one tiny, fragile shard at a time. Sarah was there for every physical therapy session for Leo's lingering shoulder injury. She helped him find a new apartment, a place with good light for his woodworking projects. She listened for hours as he spoke, not about the assault, but about their childhood, rebuilding the foundation of their shared past. Leo, in turn, learned to forgive. He saw the sister he loved beneath the layers of manipulation and fear. He saw her fighting her way back to the light, and he held the lamp for her. Their bond, forged in tragedy and betrayal, was now tempered by a hard-won, unbreakable truth. So, what do we learn from a brother's sacrifice and a sister's painful awakening? We learn that true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet integrity of a man willing to be broken for what he believes in. We learn that love can sometimes blind us, but the truth, no matter how painful, has a way of finding the light. It reminds us that the people who have always been in your corner are the ones to trust when the world turns dark. Their love is not a performance, it is a foundation. Look around at your life. Who is your Leo? Who is the person whose loyalty you never have to question? Don't wait for a crisis to see their worth. Remind them today that you see them, that you value them, that you are grateful for the quiet strength they bring to your life. Share this story if you believe in the power of loyalty, and comment below with a time someone stood up for you when no one else would. Because in the end, the family we fight for is the family that heals us.